Hey, my name's Pete Allen. I represent UPT and Flight 1, and I'm responsible for approving and training new Mutant pilots. I'm also involved in the continual research and development of the system, and I currently communicate between existing Mutant pilots and UPT. My goal with this presentation is to let you know how we go about approving someone and training someone, and then who should be jumping one of these things at your drop zone. Let's have a look before we go into the details about the Mutant. Let's have a look a little bit at the history of paragliding, which is where the Mutant draws its inspiration from. Back in the 1970s and 80s, and you can see from those pictures on the left of the screen, paragliding looked very much like skydiving did at that time. And if you look at the pictures on the right, which come from this or last year, 24, 25, there's not a huge amount of difference between the way that people are flying. Let's have a little snapshot now of how paragliding is today. Paragliding has progressed incredibly. There's a cohesive unit between the pilot and the wing. Wing design has developed in leaps and bounds, and harness design has stayed with it. Basically, flying from a supine position allows you to use aerodynamic drag and weight shift, maintaining the form of the wing so that the wing can be flown far more effectively. Well, that was until this guy came on the scene. Vince Reffett and his buddy Fred went to Val Fréjus in the late 90s, early 2000 and learned how to speed ride from Antoine Montant. He was their coach. He was also the world's most progressive acro pilot at that time under a paraglider. And he looked at the way that Vince and Fred were flying their skydiving harnesses and said, why are you guys trapped in the 1970s and 80s? Why are you not flying your skydiving harnesses the same way that we fly from the hips? Well, Vince took that message to heart. He went back and, along with his dad, built a system that he started to jump in skydiving Puria Brava. And it was a very basic system. It was great for under canopy, but he didn't feel like he could operate it in freefall. It was basically just a paragliding harness that was slipped on under and around his existing harness. He then went to UPT and met this guy, Blickies, and that began a 10-year development process. They did what it took to get the idea into what it currently is. The Mutant is now in production and has been since 2018. There's about 300 out there. Let's start to see now where the Mutant has taken us within our sport. Ian Bobo was the first person to adopt the Mutant in competition. He basically committed to showing the world what a supine harness could do. And it wasn't long before people sat up and took note. Nowadays, you can't get on the podium unless you're flying a Mutant or a supine harness. It's also amazing where the Mutant can take us. Up until this point, if you could go mountain flying, but the lines that you flew were nothing like you see with speed flyers. What you're seeing on your screen right now is a Valkyrie in a Mutant harness, and it was jumped from an aircraft. This is not a speed flying harness. This is a very competent speed fly pilot, skydiving pilot, taking it through its paces in the mountains in Norway. Vince's dream, if you remember, wasn't just about what you could do under canopy. He wanted a system that he could fly in freefall. I mean, Vince and Fred were free fly world champions. And that's exactly what you can do with the Mutant. Another incredible benefit with the Mutant is that for people with certain disabilities, it gives you access to a decent landing position. In fact, the pictures that you can see here, Aaron came up to me after watching me land on my Mutant about 4 years ago and said, how do I get to jump one of those? Well, he only had 250 jumps at the time, but after attending a canopy course with me and going through the training, he started to jump the Mutant. He now has about 2,000 jumps, and he's jumping a Petra 59 and doing free fly, XRW, all sorts of things. Something that I don't know if he would have had the same ability with a standard harness. So how do you get your hands on a Mutant? Well, unlike a normal rig that you just go to your dealer and put in the order form, there's actually an application process. You go onto the website, read through the page giving you all the information about the mutant, and then there's an application form. On that form, you're going to have to give us your skydiving experience, your supine experience, and also 2 references, one of which has to be a current mutant pilot. And then that email comes to me. Using my connections around the world, I'll build up a picture of what the applicant looks like, and I'll either approve them, ask them to reapply when they have more experience, or decline them. From there, we divide the applicants into two types of candidate. One is someone with supine experience, that's a lot of speed fly or paragliding experience, and type 2 is someone with little or no supine experience. So, having been approved and waited approximately a year for your rig to be delivered, the next step is the training. When you're ready to start your training, you may have your rig, but the mutant-specific cutaway handles will go to your ambassador. Your ambassador is the person that's qualified from Flight 1 to do the training. We have people spread out all over the world. The training course is a minimum of 2 days and consists of about 3 to 5 jumps. The training comprises of the first 2 or 3 hours of fitting the harness to you. Each harness has 6 points of adjustment. So we adjust the main lift web, the upper, lower laterals, and the belly band and the leg straps so that it fits you and your flying style. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see Ian hanging in his harness, showing the adjustment points. And then down below, we have Bo. Now, Bo showed up for his fitting with his Speedfly harness and said, I want to get a very similar feel so that I can go between the 2 harnesses. After getting the harness fitted to you, we need to cut the cables because obviously they depend on the length of the main lift web, and train you in the cutaway process. On the cutaway, the upper rings disconnect first, followed by the lower rings, and that has to be symmetrical. Then we train you on the opening process, getting ready for your first jump. And the opening process, it's a little bit more complex than a standard deployment. It has to be jumped with an RDS, otherwise you're going to have a slider flapping in front of you. Now, once you've tucked that away, the next step is to locate the white ball, smoothly release it, and that disconnects you from the top rings. Having done that, you can start to lean back and get yourself ready to fly in a supine position. Press the red button, slide into your leg straps, release the brakes, and really start to fly for the first time. Now, normally when you see a mutant, it's someone on a Instagram or Facebook post or screaming by you at a competition on a Peregrine or a Petra. Well, the first jumps are not like that. For each type of candidate, whether you got supine experience or not, the first couple of jumps are on a more docile wing. We recommend between a 1.5 to 2.0 wing loading and a more stable platform. Something like Angelo here, who, as you can see on his 3rd or 4th jump, is flying a Sabre 107. Straight in approach, just learning to land with natural speed, just coming to terms with a new flying position for the first time. And then subsequent jumps depend very much on whether you're a type 1 or type 2 candidate. The canopy choice, as I said, is a more docile platform to start, and then we recommend an intermediate wing before returning to your standard wing. We now have a progression card. We've always had a progression process, but now we have a card that if someone shows up at your drop zone that has just done their training, please ask to see it to see where they're at on their journey. And here is the card, and I'll just read from it a little bit, just take you through the processes here. They're the minimum jumps or the minimum requirements for each type of pilot. And remember that some people progress faster than others. There are certain key skills on the card that need to be initialed and signed by the ambassador. As I said, the wing type is going to change. We strongly recommend that even for the intermediate wing, that there is a canopy with less roll, something like a Velo or a JFX2. We ask type 2 candidates, those are the people without supine experience, to stay away from the wings like VKs, layers, Petras, peregrines, airwolves, etc. Until they've got a lot more experience. And all of the jumps should be high pulls. Type 1 candidate, as you can see, we have space for the ambassador, the name, the date of the training, and also the canopy recommendations for each pilot. Jump 1, the exercises are pretty simple. It's all about getting to know the opening procedures, learning how to land it, and just getting used to the harness in general. Jump 2, we'll be doing pitch recovery, and jump 3, we'll start to add turn recovery and look at adverse yaw. Then, if you're a type 1 pilot, that means you're pretty experienced in speed flying or paragliding. You can start to make your own way onto your wing when you feel ready. Especially if you're a type 2 candidate, someone with no supine, you're going to have to learn how to fly all over again. You can get away with a lot of stuff on an upright harness that you cannot get away on a supine harness. Have a look at the video on the left that's playing right now. If you lean and pull a toggle, everything looks normal. If, however, you just hang underneath the harness and start pulling on a toggle, some strange things start to happen. That was on a VK71. The video on the right is me jumping a Sabre 97 with about a 1.7 wing loading. As you can see, just putting an input into the canopy the same way you would a normal canopy has a very different response. Something called adverse yaw, where your body is moving one way opposite to your canopy. Now this can create a whole bunch of reactions in a new pilot if they're not used to it. That last turn, as you saw, was a connected turn. By connected, what I mean is you lean with your body and then you add the input, and then things start to behave as normal. One thing that we stress is that each pilot has to be comfortable with turn recovery as well. And in this video, you can see me starting a rotation using a body input. First thing is recover with the body and then recover with the toggles. If you try and just pull on the toggles whilst you're rotating, the harness and canopy is not going to respond the same way as it would with an upright. So it's super important that new pilots go through all of that training on a more stable wing and intermediate wing before they start playing with their own. A type 2 client, same jumps at the beginning, but we spend a lot more time getting used to the harness. Jumps 3 to 5 is more repetitions of all those exercises. As soon as they're ready, they can start doing some turns for landing, toggle surges to a 45, 90 or 135 rotation for landing. And then all of those exercises need to be redone every time you change your wing, or if you're on current, just like with anything. We would like to see the pilot has a firm understanding of all of these skills before they do anything greater than a 135-degree turn. Basically, when you start wanting to do a 270, you need to show us that you're ready for it. All right, so now someone shows up on a drop zone with a Mutant. What do you need to look out for? Well, who is it? If it's a top-level competitor and you know them, great. But if it's someone you're not aware of, find out if they've been approved and if they've gone through their training. If they're newly trained, they'll also have the proficiency card. If in doubt, message me. Get in contact. We have a record of everyone that's been approved and everyone that's gone through the training. Something I've noticed with the Mutant is we don't get the same buddy checks that we might if we were jumping a normal harness. Normally when someone looks at my Mutant, they just like, oh God, I don't know what to do, what to look at. However, if you train someone, and I recommend a new Mutant pilot does this when they get to their drop zone, is train a few friends to gear check your Mutant so that they can help you out with that process. What kind of jumps should the pilot be doing? As I said, initially, they're going to be solo high pulls. But Vince's dream was to have a system that they could be used in free fall as well. So longer and longer free falls, some 2 ways to start, 3s and 4 ways. Some people work with a Mutant. They want to be very comfortable with the gear and also being aware of the external handles, which could become a snag hazard. I would stay away from big waves. Things can get a little bit busy. Another thing is you don't have to release the upper rings to land the Mutant. You could use it as a normal system. A lot of people aren't aware of that. Is that, let's say you open, it's a little bit of traffic, you're a little bit in a position where you don't have time to deal with the supine release. You can just land that canopy totally normally. Maintenance. The Mutant is like a car that you have to get a little bit involved with. It's not something that you can just fill up with gas and then keep driving it. With the Mutant, you need to get your hands on the gear and really understand every part of it. One thing, for example, is about the cutaway cables. At UPT, we recommend that you lube the cables at least every 50 jumps and that you clean them with WD-40 and then add some silicone spray. If you're jumping somewhere that's dirty, dusty, or the white ball starts to become a little bit sticky, we recommend you clean it sooner than 50 jumps. There are a couple of modifications that people are making to the Mutant in order to improve the performance, and that would be the limiter across the belly band and also Y risers. And what these do is maintain a profile of the wing that's more similar to how the canopy was designed at the manufacturers. Now, when you buy the Mutant, you sign a waiver saying that you're not going to modify it. So if you think that someone's playing around with a harness, please let us know, ask them to get in touch with us. Whilst going through the training, we let people know about the increase in speed that is possible from the Mutant. I mean, that's why most people are buying it. AADs, even set at extreme or the speed versions, have a firing speed of 100 to 102 miles an hour. Now, we've found that people flying wings of 2.4 and above getting close to or superseding those speeds. So we encourage pilots to check their fly sight or some kind of tracker to see if they're approaching those speeds. We have had people say to us, but I want to do AFF and jump my Petra 55. Well, it's not like that. You are going to fire the AAD, and it has happened, and it's potentially fatal. So please keep an eye on your speeds and adjust using different equipment or the types of maneuver so that you stay away from those firing speeds. Who can do rigging on a Mutant? Well, only UPT. Up until recently, you're going to have the rig sent back to Blickies and Basil at UPT. However, as of PIA in March, we have 3 newly qualified riggers, one in France, one in Norway, and one in Australia, that can do a certain amount of rigging. Anything above what they can do has to get sent back to UPT. What's next for the Mutant? We're continually trying to make improvements. I feel like the Mutant program is a bit like Formula One in racing, in that we're making small adjustments to make the system faster and more effective. But with that in mind, we're constantly learning and finding ways to make it better. The first one I can talk about is the riser covers, for example. We've now, for those that are free flying with the rig, we've got low profile riser covers, and they can be retrofitted to an existing Mutant. We noticed there was a propensity for a certain type of malfunction where the main risers and line group were snagging on the bottom of the reserve tray. Now that can happen with any rig, with any manufacturer, but it's more susceptible on a Mutant because of where the lines start relative to the reserve tray. Now, if you pack it correctly, as you should with every rig, with the risers and lines all the way down to the bottom of the main tray, you should be fine. But by adding these guides so that the line groups move away from the reserve tray, pretty much stops that type of malfunction from happening. They again can be retrofitted, but all new Mutants are coming out with those new riser covers and with what we call tacos. We call them tacos because they're the shape of a taco. Since the rig first came to production, we've also updated the cutaway and the reserve handle to be slightly stiffer to stick out more away from the risers. We have various seat pad options, a more ballistic option if you're swooping competitively, and also we're working on a free fly friendly version. That's going to be available for certain pilots doing certain types of jumping. We do have a couple of prototypes working through the system right now. We have big dreams about where we can go with the rig, and I'm very excited. I hope to be able to tell you more on this very soon. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for watching this presentation. If you have any questions about the Mutant, please contact me, Pete at flight-1.com, or get hold of me through UPT or social media. And as I said, if someone shows up with a Mutant to your drop zone and you're not sure if they should be jumping it, please get in touch. Thank you.